Bob said the magic phrase, time to make the donuts. So we'll get started early. Just a couple minutes. I show we're about 3 minutes out, maybe four. But the gang's all here. Michael Weber, Padre, 858 Bill, Dan Boyd, Fatty McButterpants, Pete Crow's checking in from across the pond, Idris Taylor, DePaul 31. How you doing, my friend? Mark Miller, what's up? Randall Spencer, and a whole host of others. But I believe it was Mark Miller who asked if he's being set up or if it's legitimate that a woman wants to meet him after chatting with him on the internet through some app of some sort, and says, "What are your thoughts on that?" I say the odds are it's a scam, but you never know. It's possible. Oh, we would need to know more details than we have right now, but let's just leave it at that. DePaul asks about the microphone topper. This is WLEW. It's leaning against a car on the set top shelf. Somebody sent that in to me. Apparently, it's designed to where it would actually bolt onto the back of the lollipop, but I have not done that for a couple of reasons. One is the lollipop's not a microphone I ever used in radio. It does not look to me like a broadcast microphone. Number two, it would block stuff behind it. The microphones already take up a lot of space. But someone sent it, and I'm very, very grateful they did, in fact, do that. So Leon Anders checking from Rochester Hills, Michigan. I was talking to somebody yesterday about somebody in Rochester. Can't remember who that was now. Old Paint 71, howdy from Crivets, Wisconsin. Crivets. Lewis Browning. Sheriff Terry Gray of Robertson County, Kentucky, is a sheriff in a dry county. That might explain some things based on my video from recent. The unknown variables check-in is, hey, solve for the unknown variable. Acoustic G-string, hi, everyone. John Marbury, morning. Manuel Guerra is in the house. Manuel's a good friend of mine also. Oh, out biking, can't stay long, but hello. I appreciate that. Davey Mac, hi, Steve. Kazooie Trisha Haya from Scotland. Very, very cool. I've had friends traveling. My good friend Dwayne just went to Europe and wound up over as far as Germany. But he was there for 2 weeks, wandering around England and France and Germany. Got to see a lot of cool stuff. Pete Crow says, we don't get more rain soon. It might not be a pond. It'll be a puddle. Referring to the Atlantic Ocean, of course. We've had a dry spell here. We got a little bit of rain a couple days ago, but I think September may have been one of our driest Septembers in like forever. So Ted Saxon's checking from Independence, Missouri. Kimberly Kester, hi, good morning. Checking in, thank you, appreciate that. I did send the Canadian Robot Lady a note to ask her if she might be available this morning. I've not heard back from her, but I hate to bug her too much, but I know with the time difference and all that, she does work on Sundays. So Acoustic G-string says, you're probably talking to a Nigerian man. No one will show up. There's always that possibility. G Keyman 565. Hello, Steve Lehto, and hello, G Keyman 565. Paul Harris. Macho Man from, is it Papillon or Papillion, Nebraska? I always like it when they take a word that should be pronounced a certain way, like Charlotte. No, it's Charlotte, Michigan. Charlotte. Mark Miller, me and my friends, 4 of us, got tickets to see Rush in Chicago next July. That's a big deal that Rush is going to be touring. I've heard the tickets are expensive, but I don't fault anybody for paying for tickets if that's what you want to see. I saw 2 shows in the last few days. I saw Elvis Costello at the Royal Music Theater on Thursday night, and Friday night I saw a band called Granddaddy at St. Andrews Hall, which is a very, very small venue in Detroit where you have to stand amongst a crowd of people. And if you don't like people, it's not the place you want to be. But it was a good show. Matthias, we just met a couple from Michigan, Aberdeen, Scotland. Question is, where were they from in Michigan? I wonder. And again, no sign of your stuff, Matthias. I apologize. That's how it works. Andreas checking in from Sweden. Hello, Steve from Luleå. I appreciate that, my friend. I love to see the people checking internationally. Dan Boyd, I bet they'll kick butt with that new drummer. Yeah, I forgot her name, but there's a woman drummer, and I've seen video of her drumming, and she's good. She's good. And as you can imagine, Rush would need a good drummer to replace the one they lost. And it's not your typical anybody could just come over here and sit down and, oh, you want me to do this? Yeah, I can do that. No. Rush Rush is a little more complex than that, and they got somebody. And I'll give you right now the wisdom that I gained. Rick Beato endorsed her. Rick Beato said, "No, they made a perfect choice with her." So 858 Bill says, remember John Lodge? John Lodge passed away. He's from the Moody Blues. He was 82 years old. I never saw them play. I owned a bunch of their records. I had older brothers who were really into the classic rock, and I got exposed to all kinds of stuff like the Moody Blues and Eric Clapton. I'm talking about, Derek and the Dominoes and Traffic and all that kind of stuff. But I'm very familiar with the Moody Blues. Loved their stuff. Absolutely loved their stuff. And he just passed away. He was 82. Likewise, Diane Keaton passed away just yesterday, and she was 79. And she was, of course, in a lot of movies. She won an Oscar for Annie Hall, but she was in a lot of other big films as well. So there you go. Mark Miller agrees that Neil Peart was an amazing drummer, the guy from Rush. M. Kolba greets from Milwaukee. Leon Anders, my brother, had 16 drunk drivings, never did a day in jail. And Acoustic G-String says, yeah, he probably had a great lawyer. And how long ago was this? And were those in America? Because there was a time when you could just get as many as you wanted. Nobody seemed to care. Oh, forgive God. Hi, I'm Mr. Lehto. Thanks for doing a video on the Liz amazing topic, talking about the VIN stickers or whatever on the Newmar RVs. Paul Harris saw Hootie and the Blowfish standing only in the venue here in Boston many, many years ago. A lot of great music in Boston. I always liked the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, and then they went and broke up. I never got to see them live. Kind of bummed me out. Shaban, OMG, guys. Believe in yourself is checking in from Napanee, Ontario. Image Doc Ray says Rush used to open for my cousin's band UFO. It's always funny how that works out. You hear about a band opening up for somebody else. I've mentioned before, I went and saw, trying to mental blank now, whether it was the Beach Boys or maybe an REO Speedwagon that John Cougar was warming up for, and he didn't show up because he'd suddenly become too big. And so they announced John Cougar will not be here. People started throwing stuff. I think that was the REO Speedwagon show at Pine Knob years and years and years ago. Years ago. Well, Acoustic G-String says my mom got charged with 16 originally, but many were pleaded down, but she went to prison twice, did weekends in jail and had community service, etc. And sadly, that's somebody, I don't need to say this, but they have a drinking problem and they really need help. And prison will make you stop drinking. I mean, it's not like you got an open bar in prison, but it's sad that some people cannot help themselves. Daniel Kester, I'm late. Later than I wanted to be, but hi, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. Yeah, well, Daniel, we also started early, so it makes you feel like you're really, really late. Oh. Gordrath, hey, Steve, will you ever run for president of the United States? No. Same reason. I don't want to be a judge. Padre, the cup does sort of match the T-shirt. They're both orangish. They're from the same orange family on the color wheel. Dan Boyd, REO Speedwagon was huge my freshman year, 80 to 81. Oh, no, that was the peak of their powers. 79, 80, 81, right around there. You can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. And they had the live album. Oh, my, unbelievable. And then, of course, Gonna Keep on Loving You was just wall to wall on like every station. There was a few bands that did that. REO Speedwagon was one, obviously. Fleetwood Mac was another. Supertramp, right around the time frame where they had music that crossed over from rock and roll to the rock stations, to the nice rock stations, to the slightly older, and as a result, you couldn't get away from the music. It was everywhere. So, Martin Godinez, hello, Steve. Greetings from Los Angeles. Zach, good afternoon, Steve, and the Canadian Robot Lady and chat. Yeah, I don't know if she'll be here today or not. I just mentioned I sent her a text, but I haven't gotten a response back yet. But I'll probably get one. Whether or not she can make it, I don't know. Yeah, Dan Boyd, High Infidelity. That was another one of their big ones. Gord Rass says, I just wanted to ask because we need someone in office with common sense. Problem is, to get elected, you need a lot of connections and you need to put up with a lot of nonsense. You gotta have a really, really thick skin. Jay Klein's back at home. Last weekend in South Carolina wore me out. We walked 14 miles Sunday and Monday. It's a lot of walking, my friend. Mustang MG05 does that postal stamp, brought to the postmark for tax returns deadline apply to all federal mail like Social Security paperwork? I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if it does, but I've never looked that up before. JJ, I see you got my WLEW sign. Yeah, somebody asked about that earlier, and I did get it. I've not put it on a microphone because the microphone that it's been adapted for is not a broadcast microphone. So to my eye, it would look funny, but it's on the set. Chris Bulldog having a property line dispute with a neighbor. All I can think videos you've done on this. The strange part is that unless you bring out a surveyor, you might never settle a line dispute like that. Good news is, like, for instance, on my property, I've gone out and found all the markers. I know where the markers are. I can show you where my property is to the inch, So Steve G. Hey, Stephen all from San Diego. Yeah, Shaban says running for office sounds like hell on earth. Someone will always hate you with a passion. Well, the worst part is they'll run wall-to-wall commercials 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the months leading up to the election and just make up stuff about you. And I'm not blaming one side or the other. Everybody does it because political advertising has the lowest bar for slander or libel. And so they can just make up stuff and go, well, he's running for office. That's what you get, So Gord Rath, do you have any hobbies that we don't know about, like fishing or boating? I'm not sure that you don't know about them. It depends on how many videos of mine you watch. I metal detect. I've got a metal detector. I've done a lot of metal detecting. I do have a canoe with a boat motor, but I haven't had it in the water in a little while. I consider my cars a hobby. I've got the Viper and the Cobra, but I mean, those are just cars that and yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, I've got other interests. Image Doc Ray points out that Dr. Demento did his last radio show after a 55-year career last night. I saw stuff about that on social media. Dr. Demento retiring. He brought us a lot of great music and actually discovered some new artists for us as well. Kayla McComber, it's snowing in Montana. It's snowing in Montana. MHOA to ran for a minor office in 78, never again. Dan Boyd, good luck reading and especially interpreting that surveyor's report. I'm not talking about the report. I'm talking about putting the pins in the ground or finding the pins. You can't argue that the pin was put there. That's the corner. That's your property. This is my property. That's the pin, So Janie Seagrass is going to go walk her dog because that apparently is what my show tells her to do. FDSS says smash that like button and thanks. The question is, what's the craziest story of the year so far? To me, so many of my stories are crazy. The one I put up today was it today or yesterday? About the sheriff with the 3 drunk drivings, 3 in 2 years. If anybody should know about the drunk driving laws, it would be the sheriff. You'd think. Jay Klein, are you down to one Explorer now? Yes. My old Explorer, the 2002, has been rehomed. My brother now has it. So I will follow the history of that vehicle. I gave it to him with 160,000 miles. I bet that it's running 5 years from now. And I don't know how much he'll drive it, though. I guarantee it'll be running. It's amazing. Gordrath, I have a White's Treasure Finder. I love metal detecting. What's the model name of the detector you've got? I've got a White's V3i, which was the last thing they put out before they basically folded up the company and got out of business. Padre says, my town was originally known as Mile Marker 8. That's when they're naming things too fast, so they've run out of good names. It happens. Duncan Campbell, wouldn't your collection of Ford Explorers count as part of your car collection? We've only got one, and it's a 2024. I mean, it's a modern one. I don't consider that to be a hobby to have a car. Gordrath, what's the coolest artifact you found while metal detecting? I've told the story before. I just don't know which channel it's on, but I found a belt buckle. Oh, by the way, Heather will join us in the second hour today. But I found an extremely valuable belt buckle that I sold. It's the only thing I found of value that I've sold. Roxanne, hello, Steve. Hello, Roxanne. Dan Boyd, I'm from near 6 Mile Stand, north out of Dayton on Ohio 48. Zach, is there a limit to how much you can find using a metal detector? Well, a metal detector has a range, and they usually refer to it as depth because normally you're detecting into the ground. You're not detecting upward. But you can easily find things that are 8 to 12 inches deep that are worth digging up. A treasure chest, an actual chest filled with metal, you might be able to detect that at 2 feet with a modern metal detector. But the odds of you walking over that are pretty slim. Old Paint 71, there's a World War II scout car on Facebook Marketplace in Wisconsin that looked great in your garage. Are we talking about a half track or are we talking about 4 wheels? So, Gordon Rath, my detector is a White's Treasure Master. Okay. That rings a bell. That rings a bell. Zach, I meant the monetary value. You mean metal detectors detect metal? They don't think about how valuable it is. Kip Morty, you buy a metal detector in the hope of finding pirate booty. You'd be amazed at what you can find with one. And a lot of times, I tell people it's like fishing. You don't know what you're going to catch. I mean, some people do, but it's just you go out there and see what you can find. Chris Bulldog says I have a surveyor appointment to put pins in. I'm not messing around. Don't blame you. Old Paint 71 says it's a 4x4 scout car. Looks like a half track, but with regular wheels in the back. Okay, is it armored? Yeah, I think there might actually be an issue nowadays with getting an ex-military car plated in Michigan. They've cracked down on that. So, Rich C, would you ever consider buying a used car from Hertz? No. Should I think about it some more? No. I would never buy a former rental. I don't care what anybody says. I've driven a rental. Okay, I don't treat the rental the way I treat my cars, and I don't beat on them. I just know, but some people do. Zach, would I legally have to turn in the treasure chest? It depends. What do you mean by turning it in? You may have to report that you found it to somebody. The question is, are you finding it on private property or on state land? What state you're in, whether it's treasure trove. There's a whole bunch of things that go on. So, Steve G says, I think you're asking about finders keepers. Yes, but there actually are some states that say if you find something of great value, you're required to notify the state and attempt to find the original owner if the original owner is findable. But if something's like, say, 6 inches underground, the original owner is not around anymore. And especially, it wouldn't be that kind of things during uh, uh, anything of that great value. Wade Pittenger, I wish Steve could use his satanic hand signals during live chat. Leon Anders, we were running the same building if you're seeing Alice Costello. Are you trying to tell me that we were in the same building if I saw Elvis Costello? There's too many missing variables in that sentence. Chuck Whitehead, you going to keep the pennies you find? I keep all the coins I find. Now I'll admit, at one point in time I did a house cleaning and I got rid of about 100 pounds of coins through a Coinstar. But I keep all the wheat leaf pennies or the wheat back pennies. The wheat leaves. I keep all the wheat back pennies and I keep anything that's old, anything that's silver. And I found, for instance, 4 large pennies, and I've also found a half cent. I found a seated Liberty half dollar. Found a walking Liberty half dollar. I found a seated half dime. The oldest silver coin I found 1837 half dime. Oldest coin I found is 1806 large penny or large cent. It's not a penny, it's a cent. Um, it's also a penny. Image Doc races Mel Fisher to fight for about 20 years over his treasure finds. Yeah, that's a sad story. Mel Fisher spends his life hunting down this treasure and he finds it. And then at the last minute, the state of Florida is like, oh, I think we want that. It's like, I mean, he won, you know. Cyberdox is my hand signals what made him buy a motorcycle last year. Satan's winning. Sam as I am says I'm one of those who checks the air pressure and fluids in the rental and refolds the clothing I take off the shelf to look at in stores. Wow. Jay Klein thought those were all gang symbols. Well, the gang is satanic. I got everybody covered. Dougie D is going in for surgery early tomorrow. Wish me luck, and I do. Good luck with that. Cyberdoc, let's go magnet fishing. Somebody sent me a magnet to go magnet fishing with. I have not gotten a chance to do that yet. I did use it to clean up the nails in my yard after I got a new roof put on. You'd be amazed at the number of roofs, number of nails that wind up after a roofing job. Zach, what's a large penny? It is a penny or a 1 cent piece made in America from the earliest days until 1855, I believe was the last year. Then they went to the Flying Eagle penny for 3 years, I believe. They went to the Indian head penny. And the large cent was larger. It's about the size of a quarter, and it's copper. And they went out of circulation very quickly because that's what happens when you downgrade a coin like that. Gord Rest, I found a half penny. Yeah, half pennies are fairly uncommon, but think about that back when they made change from a penny. Oh. Cyberdoc, it's funny how some people interpret gestures. Yeah, I don't know if you're aware of this. The earlier joke was I had somebody send me a note, and they were serious. They said, Steve, just to let you know that I'm assuming you're not satanic. You're not a Satan worshiper. But you routinely are using Satan's hand symbols on camera. And many people do this because Satan, when he can't get you to say what he wants, he can then control your hands and get you to make hand symbols. And the hand symbols are communicating with the other Satanists in the audience. And he sent me a chart of the hand symbols. Number one, you couldn't communicate much with the hand symbols because it wasn't like a full vocabulary. But second of all, it's like I just occasionally talk. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But oh no, look, that's the symbol right there for, go out and do something. No, it's not. It's me trying to look thoughtful. And believe in yourself. The worst part was I shot a video about it, made fun of it, and I wonder if the person still watches or not. I don't remember their name. G Keyman 565 got a White's Eagle Spectrum metal detector in a hard case. May need a battery. I think it's a little older though, right? The Eagle series. Where they really made the jump was when they went to DFX, the V3, where they did the all digital stuff. It's like a computer on a stick. Yeah, believe in yourself says that sounds like someone could be projecting a bit. Pissed off handicap guys check in from Crystal Falls. Crystal Falls in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Thank you for identifying that. I appreciate that very much. People used to say, I'm checking in from Michigan. Are you checking from Detroit or Ironwood? I mean, come on. Chuck Whitehead, then sign language should be illegal. Well, no, but see, sign language, we know what they're saying because this is a symbol for this and that's a symbol for that. Gordwrath, did you ever collect the steel pennies? I've got a few of them. I mean, they're kind of weird. If you leave them outside, they rust. I've never found them in the metal detector because I almost always have my detector set to discriminate out iron and other ferrous targets, and the steel pennies qualify. G Keyman says the whites he has does have a computer. How heavy is it and how big's the box? Because that's the thing, is like the DFX is fairly light and does not have the heavier box that some of the earlier ones have. Scott Argyle, it's raining and power's out here on the Oregon coast. SKS Yugo, Washington State has a new tax on precious metals starting January 1. They taxing when you buy it, sell it, or own it, or what? Sam, as I am, I say all young people should work in retail to understand how much the population should be on therapy or on psychiatric meds. Just read the comments section on anything on the internet and you'll realize that, yeah, a lot of these people, they need help. Andrew Lee says Nome, Alaska's issued a stay-home request as Typhoon Hailong hits. Most churches canceled services and stores are closed today. Wow. Jeannie Seagrass says Washington State always has new taxes. SKS Yugo, that means to buy it. You mean above and beyond sales tax? Zach, I'm in Grand Rapids. The leaves are just starting to change. I was in Grand Rapids 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago? Don't remember. It was all a blur. Oh, God. Gordwrath says the White's Treasure Master is light and is better than an Equinox. Yeah, the only detectors I know are the White's detectors, and I've only owned I owned a DFX. Actually owned a couple of those. Then I owned a V3i, which is the one I've got now. And I like that one a lot. IB1 Cool Cat's got a White's 6000 DI Pro SL. I think that's, yeah, I'm familiar with that too. It's a little older. Hot Rod Ale going for a ride today? It wouldn't be a bad day for one, about 66 degrees out. Possibly. We'll see. We'll see. Image Doc Ray, are Michiganians into the Mackinac fudge, or is it just the tourists? Primarily the tourists. But if you're going to get fudge, you've got to go to the hotel. Oh, the Hotel Murray. Hotel Murray. So you go on the main drag you get off the boat and you start walking down the main street there. Pass all the fudge shops. Skip the fudge shops. Go into the Hotel Murray. It's on the other side of the street. They've got the best fudge in town, and all the experts, all the locals, everyone else says that. And you get the fudge there. And it's good stuff. But I mean, you get a block of fudge, you're buzzing for like a day and a half, and it's out of your system for a year. So there you go. But Leon Anders, what's funny is I got no trees in my yard, but I got plenty of leaves. Yeah, the leaves have a mind of their own. They kind of just blow around. Sarah C. Hello, Stephen, everyone. Happy Sunday. Daniel Castro, this state's legislature, I'm referring to, assuming California, is considering a mileage tax. Yeah, they're right now, a lot of states are scrambling as to what they're going to do to replace the lost revenue from the drop in gasoline sales to people who switched over to electric cars. Gordwrath, Steve, you are so cool. One day I'd like to metal detect with you in South Carolina. I assume that's what SC stands for, right? Vinny Sluga, woman change for a Subway sandwich for $7,000. I'm not sure what that sentence means. Zach says, have you heard about the lawsuit with Shepler's? I saw a little thing about it, but I was confused. Well, here's the deal. To get to Mackinac Island, most people get there by ferry. There's ferries from St. Ignace and from Mackinac City. There used to be several ferries. Then there were two, Starline and Shepler's. And the people who owned one bought the other, so now they're both owned by the same company. First thing they did is they jacked their prices up on everything. And then they started complaining about stuff. And at one point in time, the buyer of the other line was threatening to sue. Maybe they did sue, but they're all fighting back and forth. And meanwhile, it's like to get to and from this island, it's one company that controls the bulk of the traffic. Now, obviously, somebody could start another ferry service, but they'd have to do all the stuff with getting the dock rights and all that stuff. You can fly out there if you got an airplane, but it's a small airport. But it's one of those things. I love Mackinac Island, though. I visit there usually once to twice a year. Jenny Seagrass says, I find it interesting a good majority of tourist traps sell fudge, and only people eat the fudge while they're on vacation. Well, I'm not sure a fudge shop in a downtown area in a typical town would sell much fudge. It seems like a very specialist thing, but I suspect it's because you can watch them making it. And if you get drawn in by watching them make it, then you smell it and you get a buzz going from the smell. And you're like, oh, I should have some of that. And then, of course, you feel guilty because you've been watching them for a little while. So Gordrath confirms that, yes, South Carolina in this context does, in fact, mean South Carolina. Chuck Whitehead says, why not tax the electricity bill, if you own an EV? Another one. Dean Stevenson, hi, Steve, another Kiwi invasion. Are you down there in New Zealand? Place I got to get to. Vinny Sluga now says, woman, I'm guessing, charged $7,000 for a Subway sandwich. I think I saw a story on that. That happens from time to time where people swipe their card and they're putting in something they think is their PIN and it's actually like asking for a phone number or something. Or the other way around, they think it's a phone number and they type in a 7-digit number and they wind up paying thousands for something. Bob Blah Blah says the saltwater taffy they sell around the Great Lakes seems to be missing something. I never was a big taffy eater, but of course the joke about the Great Lakes is that it's fresh water and it's shark free. Mustang MG05 says a helicopter business ferrying people could be successful. There's already a company that runs helicopter rides where you can get in a helicopter and fly around up there. I'm not sure they ferry people back and forth or not. Interesting question. Kazooie Trisha says, I love fudge and I eat it whenever I can. I'm just like the other person said, I eat it once a year when I buy it fresh from the Hotel Murray or the Murray Hotel. Johnny Z. Bradley says, here in Missouri, we have a tourist trap called the Uranus Fudge Factory. There's also the Mars Cheese Factory in Wisconsin. I never quite understood that. I didn't stop, though. Zach says, I used to be able to look out my window and see the Mackinac Bridge. The town is only busy for a few months out of the year. Rest of the time, it's almost a ghost town. I've gone through Mackinac City itself at the south end of the bridge in the wintertime, and you're right, half the stores are closed. But I love going to the Upper Peninsula in the wintertime. I don't care what time of the year it is. Old Paint 71 says helicopters are expensive to operate. Yeah, the maintenance is a nightmare. How often they need maintenance compared to an airplane. Kelly Halloran says, hi, everyone. Love you. Lehto, you are my favorite YouTube attorney. Well, thank you. When I started doing this 10 years ago, I didn't know there was ever going to be a category of YouTube attorneys. There were a few of us at the time, but there's a lot more now. Thank you. I appreciate that, though. Daniel Kester, there's a company that used to ferry people around the Great Lakes that used Ford Trimotors. Those are cool planes. I like those. It looks almost like you got like a shed to fly. Gordrath, you should start a metal detecting club. The reason those don't work is because most metal detectors are introverts who'd rather be standing out in the field by themselves, metal detecting, or occasionally we do detect others, but it's not. We don't usually view that as like a big group party event. Janie Seagrass, did you see the helicopter crash in California yesterday? Yes, I did. Several people sent it to me, and it was wild. And I guess people walked away from that. I'm not sure how bad they are, but it wasn't like a big ball of fire or anything like that. Dan Boyd's seen a few tri motors, but never one flying. I'm not sure if I've ever seen a flying either, but I've seen some that were flight worthy at air shows and so on. Marty Ober, thanks for getting the word of law out there. AT1 CVB 41. If a helicopter's transmission doesn't leak, it's probably empty. Daniel Kester, the big maintenance issues with helicopters, they shake themselves apart. I just know that I've seen what the maintenance intervals are for like a typical single engine hobby airplane versus a helicopter, and they're in different classes. And I also know that it's much harder to fly a helicopter. So, Image Doc Ray, ever thought about getting a pilot's license? Not really. No. In fact, a good friend of mine who is an attorney and a pilot and a licensed flight instructor asked me if I wanted to, and nope. And he said, "Well, do you want to go flying with me one day?" I said, "Sure." So he took me for a flight. We flew all over the place. When we landed, he goes, "Hey, have you reconsidered?" And I said, "No, no, I'm happy just to go up once in a while on somebody else's plane, but I have no desire to fly myself or to spend that kind of money in an airplane. So no, but it was a lot of fun." Zach, I dated a girl whose uncle had to do an emergency landing in Carp Lake. Carp Lake. It probably happened 50 years ago. Where's Carp Lake? I bet there's a lot of places called Carp Lake. Douglas Gaxiola says the Long Beach Airport Air Show in the late 70s had a flying trimotor that was doing paid flights around the airport. Wow. AT1 CVV 41 says helicopters are 50,000 parts flying in a loose formation. That's good. That's good. Code Meester Beats helicopters are very cool, but the failsafe mode is suboptimal. Well, you can always auto rotate down, you hope, but not always. Michael Myers getting a license was one of my best decisions. Gord Rath, I just want an excuse to meet you and to shake your hand. I enjoy that we share hobbies. I'd enjoy it if you signed my book. Which book have you got? Email me directly. We'll chat. And people might go, Steve, you put your email there and you ask someone to email, aren't you worried you get a lot of email? No. Good chance he won't even email me. I learned that a long time ago. Pod races, airplanes turn into gliders, helicopters turn into rocks. Not quite that bad, but yeah, I get the point. STP World says I've been preserving NPR cassette tapes in case they disappear. I found a few so far. Cool. I'm sure other people are doing that as well. It's probably a good idea. Fatty Butterpants, you aren't likely to be pulled over while flying without a license. Yeah, in fact, I was just watching Hoover Debrief, Pilot Debrief on YouTube, one of my favorite channels. It's a pilot who's got tons of experience, and he goes through and he breaks down airplane crashes. And he did one recently with a guy who wasn't licensed and was just flying around with people, and he crashed, and people died. And one of the problems was he wasn't licensed. Image Doc Ray says there was a Ford Trimotor at Santa Monica Airport for years. They also had, believe it or not, a Corsair there. And the reason I know that my brother used to fly to Santa Monica. My brother's got a pilot's license. Old Paint 71 says they say that helicopters don't fly; they beat the air into submission. And Zach reminds us, "Get to the chopper." It's not chopper; it's chopper. Get to the chopper. Get to the chopper. Oh boy. Michael Myers says an auto rotation is in fact part of the emergency procedures for a helicopter pilot. I would believe that to be true. G Keyman 565. My detector was sold in '94 from a supply place in Alaska, then repaired in '02. Yeah, I don't know the timeline for when the V3i came out or when the DFX came out. The DFX has been around a while, but the reason, for those of you who don't know, a metal detector is an electronic device, and it's got a search coil on it, and out of the coil it radiates um, electricity. Think radio waves. And then what it does is, if those electrical waves pass through metal, it induces something in the metal to kick a reflection back, in essence. Not an actual reflection, but a response. And the detector transmits on one frequency and then listens, receives on another frequency. And they refer to that as a transmitter receiver metal detector. And the guys realized that you could actually get a metal detector to transmit on more than one frequency and then listen for reflections on several frequencies. And it would be even better at figuring out what was in the ground, especially with using microprocessors. So the DFX stood for dual frequency, and it had two frequencies. And then the V3i had, as you might guess, three frequencies. And it's constantly broadcasting into the ground and listening, in essence, for reflections coming back. And then it takes the reflections and runs them through a microprocessor that analyzes based on the strength of the signal and the frequency of the signal getting back as to what the target probably is. That is why a modern metal detector swept over a coin, if you've got it in coin mode, can tell you what the coin is. And so it'll actually say, this is a penny, this is a dime, this is a quarter. And some of them are so accurate, it'll say this is a quarter that is solid silver at 6.5 inches. And it's accurate within a half an inch. But they're very expensive, but they're very, very cool. So there you go. JC, the Music Man, says the Huntington helicopter that crashed was the same model as Airwolf, a Bell 222. The tail rotor came off, causing the crash. And it's pretty low to the ground when it happened. SKS Yugo, I've seen how helicopters are built. I won't ride one unless it's absolutely necessary. I went to the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, and they actually had a helicopter hanging from the ceiling. And, as a work of art, they're pretty cool. Flying one is another thing altogether. I've been in a helicopter before. I've flown in a helicopter one time in St. Ignace, of all places. Chris Bulldog says, anyone else remember the British show Detectorists? Yes. And it was a good show. It actually expressed very well how most detectorists are. They're often a bit odd, to put it nicely. Michael Myers says, I used a metal detector last time, reminded by a federal park cop of the Antiquities Act. Well, yeah, there's places that you don't want to detect. Federal parks is one. Some state parks have problems about it. Private property, you're fine. And public property, you want to look into it, but you're probably fine. And then, of course, you got to be careful around anything that's historically and archaeologically significant. And I've heard from people who've detected in places like that, and it's like you're running a risk there. Prince Albert's, I rode a helicopter from Jacksonville to the USS San Antonio, which was interesting. Yeah, landing on a boat's a different thing altogether. Steve G, if I had a $10,000 for a metal detector, I would not need one. Well, they don't cost that much. You can buy a decent detector for about $1,000. And I've had people go, oh, $1,000? Yeah. The belt buckle I mentioned earlier is $16,000 that someone paid me for it. And when I put the video up, people are going, hey, Steve, I can't believe you just admitted that you did that and didn't pay taxes on it. I never said I didn't pay taxes. What are you talking about? People hear things that aren't said. It's weird. Belio, in a video of Igor Sikorsky, he's asked and answered the question, when will a helicopter be as efficient as an airplane? He says never. But helicopters can do things that airplanes never will. And that is correct. Jay Klein says, I think the helicopter crash yesterday was part of a film crew. Okay. Pete's Overland Adventure says, it's a beautiful Monday morning here. How is it living in the past? Why don't you tell us how the rest of our day is going to go? CyberDox is $1,000, a decent price and a worthy metal detector. Oh, you can find used ones too. There's a lot of people who buy them who don't understand how much work it is. I've seen guys who bought one, used it for like 2 hours, and then just dumped it. So this is stupid. It's like people buy expensive fishing equipment and then want the fish to jump into the boat. No, you still got to work. Beelio, I bought a metal detector from Harbor Freight. Makes great beeps and buzzes. Yeah, but will it jack your car up? Douglas Gaxiola says the helicopter crash was at a Cars and Copters event. There are always lots of photographers there. Lewis Browning, you want to talk about fun? Parachute out of a Chinook helicopter. I've got some Air National Guard bases, not near me, but apparently two of them, or at least the place they take off and land from. If you draw a straight line, I'd be along the path because about once a month or so, I hear this, whoop, 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 whoop. And I look out that window right there, and I see a bunch of Chinooks go by in a row, and really cool, really loud, and periodic. I mean, it happens fairly regularly all year round. Speaking of all the helicopter talk, there's a book out called Chicken Hawk. Chicken Hawk, and it's about a guy who flew Huey Cobras in Vietnam, and it's one of the coolest war books I've ever read. The guy's got some great anecdotes. Very, very cool. Obvious Captain. Howdy, everybody. What did I miss? Not much. Witness multi chick. Hey Steve, how's it going? Good. How are you doing? Have more people not looked at your videos ever since we told people not to look at them? Mark Miller, ear damage regularly with Chinooks. Oh, I believe it. I almost think they damaged people's hearing on the ground. Thump, 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 thump. Code Beaster Beats says Chinook and Osprey go over me fairly often. The Ospreys are weird. Those things are weird. Somebody asked earlier about VTOLs. Richard Tuhoon says the Osprey is a military plane that can fly similarly to a helicopter. It's got gigantic blades. So sitting on the ground, the blades face up and it lifts off. And then as it lifts off, it transitions into a flying mode and it's a tilt rotor. And the rotors tilt to be in the front and then it flies like an airplane. So in response to Igor Sikorsky's question, if you don't mind an insanely expensive solution, that will do it. But yeah, they're very, very complicated, very, very expensive. I'd hate to see what the maintenance intervals are on one of those. Oh, Old Paint Signal says read Low Level Hell by Hugh Mills, who flew helicopters in Vietnam. I've not heard of that one. I'll have to check it out. Cyberdox Ospreys are dangerous. Well, you know. Witness multi chick. LOL going well. Thanks, Steve. I gained some subscribers. Thanks for the shout out. Good. Chris Tope, hi from Green Bay, Wisconsin, here for the Bengals game. Gord says the Ospreys killed more Marines and have been killed in action. I know there was a lot of talk early on about Ospreys being perhaps put into use a little bit too soon, but you know, you got to admit they're pretty cool. Leo the Nomad, I subscribed to her channel, set my computer to play every video on her channel back to back. Oh, Douglas Gaxiola says Hugh Mills got shot down 16 times. Flying observation helicopters and Huey Cobras, attack helicopters. Wow. Yeah, the amazing thing is you get shot down more than once and to live to tell about it. It's startling. But that's somebody, I mean, that guy, can you imagine you come back from Vietnam, you've been shot down 16 times, you live to tell about it, and you're like walking around like just average among average people. It's like walking on the moon and coming back to Earth, you know? Image Doc Ray says the Harrier is much cooler than the Osprey. Well, I mean, they're different things, but the Hawker Harrier is very, very cool. It is a cool, very, very cool flying device. It's one of those things where when you first see one, you go, okay, that doesn't make any sense. Then when they explain to you how it works, you go, okay, it still doesn't make much sense. And think about how complicated that is. But yeah, JC the Music Man says the V-22 Osprey is a feat of engineering, the forces on the rotor hubs and the linkages. Yeah, I said it's very complicated, very expensive, but yeah, Fake McButterpants says 16 times. Was it from that dude's drunk mom? No, they weren't crashes. He was shot down. Yeah, Daniel Kessler says don't forget about the old stuff like the DC-3. A DC-3 is just like a school bus for the sky. It's just an airplane. It just does what it does. Probably can take a ton of abuse, a lot of wear and tear, and a lot of troops got moved by those things. Vinny Slugas is the woman who spent thousands on the Subway sandwich, finally got her money back from Subway. Oh, she wasn't planning on tipping them several $1,000s? Old Paint 71 says the V-22 reputation is unfairly tarnished. Probably true, but airplane crashes will do that. I mean, look at people who think that the Hindenburg was a failure. All anybody in America knows is about the last flight of the Hindenburg, and yet airships before that have been quite successful. It's just that one darn crash that gets filmed. The humanity. Oh. Gord Rest says, by the way, I emailed you. Okay, I'll check it out. Art S is checking in from the mythical Central Jersey. Central Jersey. Josh Jogminis, hello from beautiful Minnesota, mid 60s, light rain in the forecast. I got 66 right now. I actually went around the house today and opened some windows up. And I turned the heating and cooling off because we're at a place in Michigan right now where if all my windows are closed, the house can get hot. If I open the windows up, it can get cold. I don't mind a cool breeze in the house, though. And if I'm home, I'll open the windows and try to cool it off a bit and just enjoy the fresh air. David Phillips, some days gravity is not your friend, and some days it is. Oh, boy. Mark Miller at 66F here in Metro Denver. Cyberdoc says a sudden deceleration incident. Yeah, I love all the engineering terms that the military uses and the engineers for, flight degradation was encountered. Huh? The plane crashed. It fell out of the sky. Uh, yeah, Dan Boyd says a 737 Max is the flying equivalent of the over-computerized cars of today. Yeah, and the weird thing was, I've seen documentaries about that. I'm not going to get into it here, but sometimes the companies that build this stuff make it overly complicated. And I know that they claimed that some of the stuff they're putting on that plane was to make it easier to fly. But number one, you got people who can fly the things that are already up there. Just retrain them, Yeah, Silver Dan, the unscheduled disassembly. Belio, a college friend, had a job piloting a DC-3, flying mail from Nashville to Indianapolis every night. I got to go with him and sit in the right-hand seat, landing in Indy. They're good old planes. I've been inside one. I got to fly in a B-17 bomber years ago, And the same air place, the museum that had the B-17 that flew, also had a DC-3, and they had a couple other cool planes. But didn't get to fly in it, but I got to climb inside of it and walk around inside of it, and you realize how small those things really are. Tim Collins, a CFIT, controlled flight into terrain. Some of those mountains come up at you suddenly. Prince Albert says, I don't think it was the flammable paint that was the major design flaw in the Hindenburg. Well, there was a bunch of things that probably came together that caused the Hindenburg, which I'm not going to get into here. But of course, it was filled with a non-inert gas. And by non-inert, I mean it was flammable. It was ert. Whatever the opposite of inert is. Ert. Oh, boy. Janie Seagrass says, every time I try to email Steve, it kicks me out as spam. Really? Because most of my spam winds up in the garbage can, but it doesn't get kicked back, I didn't think. Dan Boyd, I'll fly into that mountain as I see fit. CFIT. Janie Seacrest, the older you get, the more days gravity is not your friend. It's sad. I try really hard not to do the old "I'm an old man now" jokes, but I'm starting to feel that way because I discovered that a lot of the things that even 10 years ago didn't bother me at all bother me now physically as well as mentally. And I mentioned I saw 2 shows this past week. I saw a show Thursday night, a show Friday night. Thursday night, I was in the 5th row at the Royal Oak Music Theater seeing Elvis Costello. And I got to sit in a chair like a human being and watch a show. And at one point in time, Elvis is 10 feet from me. It's a very, very cool show. Very next day, I go to the St. Andrews Hall in downtown Detroit to see a band called Grandaddy. And I've got to stand in a mass of humanity. And the only way to get anywhere near the stage is to get there early, kind of work your way up front. And then people come in late and like elbow their way past you and stuff, and they want to stand like right where you're standing. And so towards the end of that show, I'm starting to think like, wow, my feet hurt. My back kind of hurts. It's loud in here. What's with all these people? So Craig McPherson, Steve, take this money, get 1,000 pennies, go purchase a calzone with the pennies, and live stream the transaction. A calzone. I assume you mean a calzone from a vendor who I can then tip if he's looking, but if he's not looking, he might get mad at me, or vice versa. Michael Myers, I'm 67, and more I see my father when I look in the mirror. 858 Bill, I notice that as you age, you don't get taller, but yet the ground still gets further away. Chuck Whitehead, I used to watch air disasters on the Smithsonian Channel. Can't believe what some pilots did to cause crashes. Oh, I can tell you right now. Go find Pilot Debrief with Hoover on YouTube. That's all he does is dissect crashes. And usually it takes more than one mistake. Usually it's several mistakes. But some of the things that people do are remarkably stupid. So, yeah, Tigerman 99515 says any pilot can tell you takeoffs are optional, landings are mandatory. Yeah, Bob Blah Blah reminds us of the Far Side cartoon where the 2 pilots are discussing what's in front of their window, and one of them goes, "What are those goats doing up here in the clouds?" They're mountain goats. Lewis Browning, getting beer spilled on you while standing in the crowd. No, nobody spilled anything on me at these 2 shows I just went to, but that's been another experience of mine, is having people spill things on me. And when I was a younger man, I would have thought that's part of the bargain. As an older man, I'm like, watch yourself. Come on. Carl's Corner likes that Pilot Debrief channel. So do I. It's one of the ones I recommend. Pilot Debrief. Michael M says my email to Steve was also blocked as spam. I had to resend it for another account. Again, I have a spam folder that stuff goes into. I get more spam every day than I get real mail. But I can tell you what routinely gets flagged as spam is when there's no subject line or when all you do is include a link. And so if you're going to send me an email about a story you want me to see, put in the subject line, funny court story, and then say, "Hey, Steve, check this out," and then put the link and sign it. And that'll eliminate about 3/4 of the stuff that I see that gets caught by the spam filters. Vinny Sluga, have you watched The Lincoln Lawyer? Yes. Not too crazy about it, but eh. Dr. Rick, hello, Stephen. Wonderful to see you, my friend. And Dr. Rick can call me Stephen because he's a doctor. Charles Layton likes Hoover of Pilot Debrief. Elliot says, why do I, as a born blind person, have a strong desire to want to fly and a deep interest and knowledge of flight control and how to aviate, navigate, and communicate? That's interesting, but I suspect it might be, and forgive me for speculating, but because you're born blind, you probably have a different perception of the dimensions around you and moving through them. And you also might not be limited by what we see as limits. That's just a thought. I don't know. Mark Miller says, I'm a metalhead, and a spill at a metal concert could mean a fight, but at a dead concert, they hug and move on. I just watched a documentary about Woodstock, the one that ended in just sheer mayhem at that Air Force base. Was that Woodstock 99? Where the Red Hot Chili Peppers closed out with fire as people were burning things. One of the greatest documentaries. It's a multi-part documentary. It's out right now. Keith Donaldson says beer, not bear. You mean if you spilled a bear at a concert, nobody'd care? Believe in yourself. That's a powerful thought, Steve. Well, I thought it was a profound question. Shaban, I hate that plane crash cannibalism story. And as always, cannibalism has popped up in the chat. Bob Kerflugen says that was the late 90s one. Yeah, Woodstock 99 and Rome Air Force Base. That was, you got to see a documentary out there right now. And it was such a catastrophe from day one. And it's simply because the promoters grossly underestimated the attitude people would have on a hot tarmac for several days being overcharged for water. Oh, boy. Andrew Lee says Finland to build 4 new U.S. Coast Guard icebreakers. Very cool. Yeah, Finland's got a big shipbuilding industry. A lot of cruise ships are also built in Finland. Bob Kerflugen said, I believe that was the one where Billy Joel Armstrong from Green Day had his front teeth knocked out. Oh, people were throwing stuff at the stage during the entire show and chanting stuff. Sheryl Crow was interrupted by a chant of show your blanks. And she actually acknowledged it and said, you guys didn't pay enough to see those. But, I mean, I saw people on stage who were huddled over trying to play, and people were just throwing stuff at them. I mean, it was crazy. Crazy. Padres says theoretically airplanes shouldn't be able to fly upside down. Yeah, Dan Boyd says the crowd was much less insufferable at the original. Yeah, then that's the thing, and people point to this, and the promoters should have realized there's some things you can't recreate, you can't duplicate. Sometimes everything lines up in the universe, and the fact that Woodstock, the original concert, happened, all those people came together on the location, all the bands came together, and the way it worked out with that much worse happening. is mind blowing. And then to say, oh, we can do that today. Well, the kids of the late 90s are different than the kids of the late 60s. Trust me. Trust me on that. So Gordress says the shape of the wings makes it very difficult to fly upside down, especially if you're counting on the Bernoulli effect to be working, because obviously that would be working the wrong direction. But that's of course what your flaps are for, and the flat plate effect as well. So there you go. Oh, and Dan Boyd, there you go, Bernoulli effect. And you did misspell it, but we got it. Don't worry about it. It's Italian. You don't need to know how to do that. Belio, are there any Lehtos in the Finnish shipbuilding business? I bet there are, but they're probably no relation to me. At least not that closely. Oh, Paint 71 says, hey, airplanes fly upside down in Australia every day. Mark Miller says, hey, I'm wearing a Jimi Hendrix 1967 t-shirt this morning. Mike Myers says, I know a girl who claims she was conceived at Woodstock. So you could do the math on that for the most part and see at least if it's plausible. Yeah, Daniel Kester says the test pilot for the Boeing 707 did a barrel roll. Now, he says over the White House. I never heard about that, but I know that there was a barrel roll performed during the test flights up in the Great Northwest. Stuff Writer, can you represent me for my 18th DUI? Only if you're out of state. Oh, that's an inside joke. Dan Boyd says that song Timothy by the Buoys was about cannibalism. Yes, often listed as among the worst songs ever. Was a song from the 60s about some people who got stuck someplace and wound up eating each other. So Elliot says it's an airplane instrument cluster joke. The attitude indicator relays what orientation you have in relation to the ground. So flying upside down would usually be an inverted attitude. And I first became aware of that in the flying world because there was a plane, it was an Alaska Airlines plane off the coast of Los Angeles that had the jack screw break, and it lost some controls in the back, and it flipped upside down and crashed. And air traffic, I believe at LAX, was trying to communicate with the pilot and lost communication. And there's another plane flying nearby. And they asked that pilot, can you see this other plane? And he said, yes, it is inverted. It is inverted. And the guy said it so casually, but of course he's a professional. And, it's inverted. And it was upside down. And it was in the drink, as they say, shortly thereafter. NYCK says, just watch the wedding cake video. Do people really spend $500 on a cake? Are you serious? That was a deposit. That wasn't the whole cake. That's probably $1,000 or $2,000 cake. I'm willing to bet you. Yes, people spend thousands on cakes for weddings. You'll never guess how much the bride's dress costs either. That's more than a couple $100 too. Yeah, Belio says, don't forget the original Woodstock. You had Sha-Na Na, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, and Hendrix all playing the same crowd. That's what always blew my mind. I remember seeing Sha-Na Na in the 70s. I assumed they were a recent thing, and somebody goes, "Oh, they played at Woodstock." I'm like, "No, why would some really?" It turns out they did. Yeah, Dan Boyd says, "I never understood Sha-Na Na being there." I don't know. I know that most of them did get paid a whole lot to be there either. Of course, money was worth more back then. Michael Myers says we bought our cake at Walmart. Did they spell everything right on it? Yeah, I see his horror stories. Daniel Kester says the Alaskan airliner crash was a DC-9. Art S says have a small wedding. It's cheaper and better. Hey, elope. Gord Rat says always remember a divorce is more costly than a wedding. And I always tell people, I say, you know something, many people get married in church and divorced in a courtroom. And courts aren't really good at everything. And that's where you'll see a lot of acrimony is in a courtroom. Hey, I forgot. I've got something to drink over here. Hang on. I'm taking off my monitor, so if I lose sound, please somebody make. That's right. I just realized I can't hear you guys anyways. I wear the monitor so I can hear myself babble. It's 50-50 Gatorade and water. Bob Blah Blah says, hey, the wedding's not costing that much, but after a few, they start to add up. Witness multi-chick. Did you see the Navy jet slam into the San Diego Bay? No, I didn't. I'll have to check that out. But the pilot ejected. That's got to be one of the strangest ideas. You're flying in a extremely expensive piece of government-owned military equipment. And you're sitting on an ejection seat. And if you're about to go to heck in a handbasket, you can eject. But when you eject, of course, number one, you could get hurt depending where you're ejecting. And number two, your plane's going to crash. You know that there's that moment in your head where you're thinking, do I eject? Do I eject? Do I eject? But you can't think that long about it. And I mean, I've seen it before. There's a famous one in an air show where a plane's about to auger into the ground and the guy ejects, comes down and walks away from it. So, Vinny Slug, ever heard of the band named Dead Heart? My dad's favorite band when he was younger. No, never heard of them. Sorry. Is it local or do they have anything like big national hits? Jay Klein, I eloped and so did my parents. I hope at different times though, right? Zach, I watered down my Gatorade. I watered down my Gatorade on this because I drink a lot of it when sitting over a period of time, and I don't want to get a sugar buzz. Yeah, Image Doc Ray says many times the ejection can break your back. Yeah, it's a violent thing. It's like the number of people I know have been injured by airbags, but you'd rather be injured by the airbag than go through the windshield. So, oh, Witness Multi-Chick says, yeah, the guy in San Diego is lucky because it went into the bay and not into the city. Michael Myers is back in the early 80s, Thunderbird's number one plane. The pilot died in an ejection accident. Wow. I've seen those air shows. I've seen the Thunderbirds. I've seen a bunch of them. The stuff they do is so insane, but they know what they're doing. So, Image Doc Ray, my buddy ejected from his F-14 Tomcat, broke ribs. Carl's Corner from Hot Shots. You just crashed an F-15. Yes, I'm paying $100 a month to pay it off. I like the Hot Shots movies, both of them. Hot Shots and Hot Shots Part 2. Chuck Whitehead, have you tried Gatorade Zero No Sugar? No, I have not. I don't mind the sugar in the Gatorade when I drink it, like after I work out or something. But when I'm on the air here, I refer to this as being on the air. I want to drink something, but water by itself doesn't do it for me, so I just mix it up. Jay Klein's parents eloped in 64. He eloped in 99. So it was not at the same time. Thank you. Art S says there's an F-102. Is that a starfighter? In a flat spin, the pilot ejected and the plane recovered on its own. Landed in a snowy farm field and was put back in service. It's on display at the USAF Museum in Dayton. It's like the horse that knows how to get back to the barn, you know? Daniel Kester says on the SR-71, the most expensive engineering system is ejection system. Well, I assume that there's all kinds of issues with ejecting from that height, correct? Oh, the F-102 is the Delta Dart. The Delta Dart. Huh. AT-1 CVB-41 and Art S both knew that. Old Paint said he wants to San Diego's a neat place to skywatch. Not unusual to see Navy SEALs parachuting into the bay. Plus, the airport approach is low over the city. That's, you want to talk about something that's got to be a pain in the rear. Repacking a parachute after you jumped into the ocean with it. What a mess. I read a book years ago about a guy who was in the French Foreign Legion, and he was in the second regiment, second division, whatever the one is that's famous for being paratroopers. And he talked about doing, jumps and all the various places they jumped into. Yeah, Belius's text Johnston was the Boeing test pilot for the Boeing Dash 80, which became the 707. At the Seattle hydroplane races in 55, he did 2 barrel rolls. He said he was selling airplanes. Gordrath, what's the worst part of your state? For what? Growing corn or crime? What do we... I like Michigan, so. Image Doc Ray says the entire cockpit of the SR-71 ejects as a capsule. Okay, makes sense. Mark Miller asks, would anyone jump out of a perfectly good airplane? I've gone skydiving one time, and I did that for a magazine article I wrote years and years and years ago. And I'll tell you right now, I forced myself to do it because I'm not too crazy about heights. And if you have a problem with heights, stepping onto a little thing about this long and wide and grabbing onto a bar and then jumping or letting go, yeah, that'll get you thinking. Tigerman 99515. Did we talk about the Tigers yet? No. I assume you mean the Detroit Tigers. I came home from that concert, and the Tigers game was earlier that day, so I checked in to see where they were at. It was like it was in the 11th inning, tied. So I turned on the TV and I watched all the way through the 15th inning when the Tigers lost. It was a good game. It's a good game, but oh my gosh, Tigers look lame. They couldn't put anything together. They stranded like 15 runners. It's crazy. Image Doc Ray, solo or tandem? Solo. Tandem jumps don't count. Come on. I know people who have, but JC the Music Man, so speaking of being on the air, I see that you have an Electro Voice RE20. Yes, so I've got one right there. How do I do? There we go. That's the one I use in my videos. And I've got another one right here because I got sick of dragging things back and forth. But I love these microphones. Very, very good microphones. A lot of people on YouTube like to use the Shuers, but then they misuse them and they put them way off, and they're not as good unless you get up real close to them. But I like the RE20. It's something I've worked with, and I'm comfortable with it. So. Cyberdoc says most people who have a fear of heights generally suffer from an inner ear equilibrium issue. I've never heard of that before. I mean, I've heard of that, but I've never heard that those two connected. Dan Boyd, I don't think I'd ever even try hang gliding. My brother bought a hang glider, but a motorized hang glider, and with which he could actually launch and then go up and fly around for a while and come back down. He actually took lessons and everything, and he had a lot of fun doing it. So, Johnny Z. Fradley, tandem jumping is like taking an Uber. Well, and I also assume that they just go, "Are you ready?" And boom, they just jump for you. But then, of course, you're strapped to somebody, so it's not the same. Vinny Sluga, Steely Dan is my favorite band, and my favorite song is "Reelin' in the Years." JC Music Man, you obviously know your microphones well. Thanks. What kind of music do you do, Music Man? I worked in radio for a long time, so I'm more into the microphones than the average person. Image Docre ultralight. Yeah, my brother had both a hang glider and an ultralight, but the ultralight he had was in essence, a hang glider with a motor on it. It was not like you didn't sit down in it and take off like a typical airplane. So Mark Heil, I was under the wing of an SR-71 Blackbird at Eglin Air Force Base in the rain. Water was dripping through it. I was told the metal tightens up at altitude. Yes. So metal expands when it gets hot, and that airplane flies so fast that it gets very, very hot from, I believe, just the friction over the wings. And so they figured that instead of having it get too tight and screwed up in the air, it would be loose on the ground in essence, with the various fitment issues. And so I believe it also leak fuel when it was cold. But they're okay. Just get this thing moving, and it'll it'll go tight real soon. JC the Music Man, I was an army band for 20 years, marching band and jazz combo. Marching band, very cool. A lot of John Philip Sousa. My grandfather played the piccolo, like a baby flute, and he was, I believe, in an army band at one point in time. Oh, Chuck White is. I'm surprised at how some animals are well behaved when they're strapped to people jumping. I've seen those guys in the military jumping with their dogs, and the dogs are like cool. Oh. Gord wrestles. My father had over 300 jumps. He was qualifying someone on tandem. The student didn't break, and my father had 3 vertebrae shattered, broken hip, and tibia sheared. Oh boy. Dustin Carpenter says the starter motor for the Blackbird is a Buick 401 V8, but that's like on a cart, right? That's not actually part of the airplane, if I'm thinking correctly. Bob Kerflugen, what's your favorite album by The Clash? London Calling. I think London Calling is one of the greatest records ever made. Although The Clash is a good album too. The one with the green cover. I was not so heavily into combat rock, but they did a lot of good music. But they're one of those. They're such a prototypical rock band. A bunch of young kids gets together, makes music, express how angry they are, and unfortunately, they don't get along. Got some weird management issues. Break up, go the different directions. A couple of them go on to other careers like Big Audio, Dynamite, and so on. A couple of them now passed away. And if you go back and see the story, the fact that they made any music at all is probably remarkable, but some of it is so good. And the song itself, London Calling, the title track, is one of the greatest rock and roll songs of all time. It's amazing, and you can find all kinds of great renditions of it, including you can see Bruce Springsteen playing it in Hyde Park for a show he did in London. Very, very cool. Bob Kerflugen liked combat rock. I always just thought, should I stay or should I go? Is kind of lame, but what do you do? Gordon, what's your favorite Police song? I saw the Police play at the Hill Auditorium in Ann Arbor in the early 1980s. Um, I like Man in a Suitcase. Um, Driven to Tears has got one of the greatest guitar solos of all time. It's one of the weirdest guitar solos, but it's cool. Oh boy. Cyberdoc, I live by the river. Yep. Bob Kerflugen says Joe Strummer's music after the Clash was great. I think he also did a radio show for a while, didn't he, in England? Canadian Robot Lady is in the house. I still rock the keyboards with heart and soul. Oh boy. Cyberdoc Andy Summers, amazing guitarist. Oh yeah, the one thing about those guys, talent wise, musically, those guys were so good. And you see a band on stage, it's like 14 people, and you're like, okay. And you watch somebody like the Police, it's 3 people. It sounds like so much more, and it sounds so good. Padre doesn't like the Police. Yeah, I knew people who were really into the Police. I mean, insanely into the Police. I was never that big of a like. I was never a fanboy of them or anything like that. But Canadian Robot Lady was sad to see Diane Keaton passed away. Yeah, we talked about her at the very, very top. She, of course, was the actress. She was 79 years old, and she was in Annie Hall, which a lot of people would know her from because she won an Oscar for that as well. Jay Klein, best sounding concert I've been to was ZZ Top. Never seen ZZ Top. I mean, those guys are good too. Talk about a few guys making a lot of music. Um, but those guys are huge for a while too. Wait. Is it Thanksgiving in Canada? I always forget they've got their own. Mark Hiles off to Cars and Copters. Hey, Mark, thanks for the note yesterday. You're the one who tipped me off about that helicopter crash. Fatty Butterpants says, hey, Sting is weird. Oh? Chief FC, you live by the river. Do you also happen to live in a van? Well, the van is down by the river, but yeah, it's a different river, I believe. Dan Boyd did do da da da. Okay, they also wrote some really stupid music. That's one of them. Don't stand so close to me. I mean, I just the song annoyed me, but what you can do. Roxanne says yes on Monday. It's their Thanksgiving. Monday? Can't have Thanksgiving on a Monday. It was like metric or something. 858 Bill. So Arlo Guthrie. Very cool. Belio says that there's a 2-week wait to check out Chicken Hawk from the local library. Really? Wow. JC Musician says Sting is one of the greatest musicians. Oh, no, he's a fabulous musician. I've just heard he's got a little bit of an ego. Just a little bit of an ego. And like I said, I like a lot of their music, but I don't like all of it. Oh, God, Rim 50 V8. How about that munitions plant in Tennessee? Craziest story. So, when we have munitions that we use in war, they get made someplace, right? So there's a plant in Tennessee where they make this stuff, and one of them just went off, and apparently the whole place blew up. And they announced there's 19 people on the scene who are all missing. And I saw a photograph. I thought it was a photograph of the parking lot. No, it's a photograph of where the building used to be. And it was literally, there's a building, and then the next picture was just flat and just like debris around the outside. Like that place went up in a vapor. Like it was just, I mean, it's the kind of thing where you're like, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Johnny Z. Bradley says Sting seemed pretty standoffish in the Rick Beato interview. I'm surprised he sat down for an interview with somebody on the YouTube. But Janie Seagrass is heading to Walmart. Art S. Speaking of Columbus Day, you found an 1892 half dollar. No, I found, like I said, I found a seated half dollar, 1876, and I found a walking Liberty half dollar from the 1940s. I forgot what year it was, but half dollars, those things. When you put a detector over one of those things, you know it because the sound is amazing. Crump, what's the biggest vehicle consumer protection rule added in the past 20 years? Michigan hasn't added any. We've subtracted a few. Our Supreme Court basically struck down the Motor Vehicle Service and Repair Act to where they can charge you for anything and you have no protection. And we've had a couple of really bad rulings and some other things. The Consumer Protection Act used to actually apply to a lot of situations it doesn't apply to anymore. So it's pretty bad. Oh, Gord Rat says there was one survivor, but 19 missing. Okay. I did not hear about a survivor. Yeah, Belia says that plant was in Bucksnort, Tennessee. Bucksnort, Tennessee. Don't forget, Michigan's got a town called Slapneck, but it's not named after what you'd think. Apparently, there's somebody named Slapnick who lived near there, and they just mispronounced it till they put it on a sign as Slapneck. AT1CVB 41. Not saying Sting seems standoffish, but if the interview was done outside in the rain, he would have drowned. Art S. I found a couple of Colombian half dollars on eBay. LGRFBS, the Vikings from the Nordic Fund, Nordic found America before Columbus. I think you're saying the Vikings got here before Columbus, maybe? JC the Music Man says, favorite part of YouTube is learning from the wise creators like you, sir. Thank you. Art S. The munitions site has 12 buildings on 1,300 acres. Now you know why. So where the buildings must be scattered pretty far apart, right? Because I only saw one blast area that looked, I'm assuming, was just a single building. I remember years ago, there's a fireworks plant in southwestern Michigan that blew up. And, there's some lines of work that are more dangerous than others. Canadian Robot Lady says, I'm rather fond of collecting Canadian toonies, which is a $2 coin, but it's $2 Canadian. The artwork on them is quite striking. Lots of color enamel insets. And hang on. Since you're mentioning Canadian money, I've got here one of them $5 bills, and somebody else sent me another one. So there's two of them there, but that's the reverse of the $5 Canadian that has the belted kingfisher on the back. And I mentioned a while back that I've always loved that bird, and I think it's cool they put it on a $5 bill. And two people kindly sent me fives. So there you go. AT1 CVB 41. Still remember the images of the Union Carbide explosion in India. Well, there was the gas escape, but it wasn't, unless we're thinking of two different things, but there was a situation where poison gas got out of a plant in India and hurt a lot of people. So, Matthias is Kingfisher's a beer brand in India. I did not know that. Angels Don't False have all kinds of money for sale. $20 fancy solid serial numbers with all fives. Yeah, I know people who collect those. I've seen that before, but I'm not as interested in just the wacky numbers. But yeah, they're out there. I mean, I'll occasionally look at them and go, wow, that's kind of cool, Sam, as I am, since my father was an inspector at the Hercules powder plant in Chesapeake Bay, Maryland, during World War II. He said it was a miracle the place didn't blow up. Is there a Bugs Bunny work where he took the hammer and would whack the shells looking for duds? Gordrath, I've got an 1833 large cent, 1867 2 cent, which is copper, of course, and an 1867 shield nickel. I have found a shield nickel and a 2 cent piece also with my metal detector. I've only found one 2 center though. I've also only found one shield nickel, but that's yeah, both very unusual. John Michael Karma says I have a 100 trillion Zimbabwe note. Yeah, that's one way to fight inflation. Is just to just crank out the money. You're not fighting inflation. I guess you're just fighting a money shortage or something. But Jay Klein says the Union Carbide India was a gas leak. Are you thinking about the explosion in Beirut? Johnny Z. Bradley says you should say that you love the image of Ben Franklin on the $100 bill. Maybe you'll get a few of them sent to you. I had a I went to an antique show yesterday in Davisburg, not Davis Son, but Davisburg, Michigan. And there's a coin dealer. I see him there every year. I was talking to the guy for a little while. And I'm like, "Hey, what'd you bring today?" And he's only showing me all the stuff he brought. And he brought a stack of Ben Franklin $50. He's like, "That's Ben Franklin's." I go, "Dude, that's the ugliest coin America's ever minted." And he goes, "I know, you're right." Blah, blah, blah. Do you ever wear your old watch? I haven't yet. I will, though. So this is my newer watch. My other watch is it's on a winder right now. It's being wound as we speak. Gordreth, you ever seen a 3 cent? Yes, and don't forget they made a 3 cent nickel and a 3 cent silver, often called a trime. And the 3 cent nickel was a little weirder. The 3 cent silver is tiny. It's like a coin the size of your pinky nail. Lewis Browning found a V nickel with an orange Radio Shack treasure hunting metal detector. Very cool. Yeah, I've only found a couple V nickels. Very uncommon. So Daniel Kester, ever find any half times? Yeah, I found an 1837 half time, which is the oldest silver coin I've ever found. Yeah, Dan Boyd says what's stupid is you go to a quarter car wash and it needs like $6 in quarters. Now, some of the ones I've been to recently do allow you to use a credit card or something to swipe with, but I actually save quarters because there's a couple quarter car washes near me. That's what I run my vehicles through from time to time. Andy, New York, 29. I found a $100 bill in a park in Florida last year. I thought it was not real, but it was. I've found $20 bills. I found fives, and I was riding my mountain bike just a couple years ago, and I look over, and something about it caught my eye. I looked down, it was a $20 bill by the side of the road. How it got there, don't know, but it was a 20. Canadian Robot Lady says if you do find toonies, watch for the fakes. There are way too many of them of certain years. They're made overseas. Prince Albert's is a 3 cent nickel should be called a trickle. Now that's good. I don't. If you can call the 3 cent silver a trime, you'd call that a trickle. I've never thought of that before. Chuck Whitehead, you have complete sets of 1 year. Not that I know of. Tigerman 99515. Doesn't the Smithsonian have a coin collection? I know the government does. I just don't know if they keep it at the Smithsonian or the Mint. Art S says the 3 cent silver is the lightest coin, but the type 1 gold dollar is the smallest. Oh, yeah. I've got a couple of those too. $1 gold pieces, and they're like that big. They're so small. I can't believe they ever used them functionally. They're just so strange. Mark Miller, I accidentally canceled my car insurance, and my new insurance doesn't kick in until the 16th. Okay. You change carriers or something? Why would you do that? Belu, are you familiar with the Petoskey stones? Of course. Yeah, no. The Petoskey stones are the state stone of Michigan, and they are very, very well known in Michigan. Children are taught that, and you see them in gift shops and so on. Johnny Z. Bradley worked at a bank in 1980 and opened up a bag of quarters and found 256 silver of them. Sold them for $2 each to a coin dealer. Yeah, 1980 was right around one of the times that silver spiked, where you could get good cash for those. Yeah, Art S says even scarier is that gold dollar was a day's wage at the time. Tigerman 99515 Petoskey stones show up at the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show each year. They're cool. Yeah, I'm not quite sure if they're as widely found anywhere else, but there's a big section of the northwestern corner of the state of Michigan, Lower Peninsula. There's a town called Petoskey, and you can walk on the beach and find Petoskey stones. And it's just a fossilized stone, but they're polished. They look really, really cool. Lion Zookeeper Uperlite stones are awesome also. The Uperlite stones are weird because they only got discovered recently, last few years. Somebody discovered that if you walk in the beaches of Lake Superior, these really bland looking gray stones under a black light glow. Nobody knew that. So now you go to the beach at night up there, you see people walking around with black lights looking for these Uperlite stones. Some of them look really cool. And I know a guy who owns a gift shop up there and he buys them and he sells them to tourists. Canadian Robot Lady says that the British Columbia ferry worker once told her to watch under the seats because lots of loose change from everyone falls underneath those big open chairs. Terrible Fire Evening from Scotland. Well, thank you for checking in, my friend. Mark Miller, didn't the Hunt family almost corner the market? They tried, the Hunt brothers tried to corner the market in the 1980s, and that's one of the times that the price of silver spiked. Yeah, Dustin Carpenter, the Hunt brothers, tried to corner the silver market. Wade Pittenger, what's the monetary threshold between simply keeping money you found versus turning it into authorities? I suspect, I'm trying to remember if they have a definition in the law, but there's a famous story in Michigan that was actually reported as a case. I don't think I ever did a video on it. Maybe I did. A guy was walking through the woods in Livingston County, which is not far from where I grew up, and he spotted something that looked unusual and out of place right off the trail. So he walks over there, and there's like a shallow depression, and there's some sticks over it that somebody put there to mark the spot. That's not a satanic hand symbol. That's sticks. And so he poked around a little bit, and there's a suitcase in there. So he opened the suitcase up. It's filled with cash. He's like, "What?" So he takes the suitcase home, and somebody goes, "You should report that to police." So he reports it to the police, and the police are like, "Oh my God, you probably just disrupted like a huge drug deal." And they got him all freaked out, and they took the money from him. And then later he went back and said, "If nobody claims it, I want it." And they're like, "No, too bad, you surrendered it." And there's a huge court fight over it. But he wound up getting it. But at one point in time, the state wanted it, the police wanted it, the county wanted it. Everybody wanted this money this guy found. And the lesson to be learned there, and I didn't say this out loud, is he shouldn't have gone to the police. What are you going to do? Oh, Mark Miller, keep it and don't tell anyone. Yeah, that's what Mark Miller advises. But really, you do wonder because it probably was a criminal deal gone wrong. You wouldn't want them. You wouldn't want them to know who got their money if it was somebody else's. Yeah, Prince Albert's, was that maybe DB Cooper's suitcase? Yeah, the weird person. I don't think they ever figured out who put the money there. But I mean, if you do the search right on the internet, you can find that guy's name, like the guy whose money, who got the money. And so it's like you wonder if anybody ever came calling on him and said, "Hey, I understand you found some money of mine." So angels don't fall have returned lost wallets, and the people didn't even offer a single dollar. Sad part is they should give you something, you know. But I've known people who got really, really lucky too. I went to the movie theater with some friends of mine years ago, actually just out of high school. One of my friends just got paid and had their entire pay in a wallet inside a purse. Got up and walked out of the movie theater. Like 20 minutes later, like, oh my gosh, ran back there and said, "Hey, I left the purse in there. Here you go." And don't know if another patron turned it in or somebody cleaning up turned it in. But the purse was there, the wallet was there, all the money was there. So Jay Klein, I found $1,100 in an RV we rented. No one claimed it, so I got to keep it. Makes you wonder if that was drug money. You never know. Richard Terhune, I have this 3-cent silver coin. If you're talking about the U.S. silver coin from the 1870s, that's what we're talking about with a trime, the tri dime joke. It's the nickname for it. But those are cool. Yeah, Zach says that could have been Walter White's RV. JC the Music Man, the worst part of losing a wallet is having to go to the DMV to replace your driver's license. Oh, just the thought of all the stuff that's in your wallet. You know, registrations for your cars, maybe proofs of insurance, voter ID card, credit cards, driver's license. Yeah, what a nightmare. Leon Anders had a buddy found a wallet with thousands of dollars on it returned. Didn't get nothing out of it. Wait, he found the wallet and returned it, got nothing? Curtis Jack Reynolds, hello from Tell City, Indiana. Tell City, never heard of it. Oh, Richard Clapp, love your site, Steve. Today is the 25th anniversary of the USS Cole, lest we forget. And there is a license plate right there on my set. And that's the longest running license plate on my set. It's been there for years. It was sent in to me by people who were associated with the ship. And I said I will leave that on my set. Other license plates come and go, but not that one. I mean, I was a bunch of people talking about stuff they found. I was out running one day, and I found someone's driver's license laying on the ground, just their driver's license. I'm like, what? And there was an address on it, and the address was a couple towns over. I just stuck in an envelope and mailed it to them. So they have no idea how it got how it got back to them. I have no idea how it got where it was. LGRFBS, would it be better if an election were held on a public holiday? It's hard to say because a lot of people would say, hey, it's a vacation day. Let's take the day off, Banana DB says I worked on that ship, the USS Cole, back in the day, installed data processing equipment. Sorry about that. Art S. Any more cars on the horizon? How about a 1934 Packard? My dad loves Packards, me not so much. Yeah, Richard Terhune points out that gold right now is at $4,035 an ounce. It's over $4,000. It's an all-time high, or right near it. Mark Miller, maybe a Duesenberg. Yeah, it's a little out of my price range right now. Although I've ridden in a Duesenberg, it was a lot of fun. I don't think it would fit in my garage either. Art S reminds us that I did in fact find a horse in my front yard one time. Although I didn't find him, the police did. But and I've since seen that horse again. AT1 CVB 41 USS Cole was part of our battle group on that day. Our ship, the USS George Washington, had just gone through the Suez. Tigerman 99515. Have you been to the Auburn Duesenberg Museum in Indiana? No, I have not. I've driven by, but I've not been there. One of these days I will go there. Angels don't false have a small property in Oklahoma I got from my grandfather who passed away. My cousin said, I wonder if he ever buried anything out there. Now I can't sell it until I go back and search it. Yeah, it makes you wonder. Image Doc Ray, you look like a Nash Metropolitan type of guy. I've seen those cars. They're kind of cool, kind of small, kind of cool. Dustin Carpenter, how about an Amphicar? If you like getting wet. Belia once found a coin purse with $50 and gave it to my pa, who was a sheriff. Oh, wait. That was Opie on the Andy Griffith show. I saw that episode about 2 weeks ago. And the sad part was that Andy Griffith's, the sheriff actually said, well, Opie, if nobody claims it in like 2 days, it's yours, or one day. And he gave them a really short time frame. And then they saw an ad in the paper. Somebody goes, hey, I lost my coin purse with cash in it. And I'm watching this going, would a sheriff even back then not know that they should hang on to it a little bit longer just in case? So MH08 says that gold price breaks out to about $142 a gram if you're measuring things in grams. Glenn Lago, how about a Hyundai Venue? Well, I've still never owned a foreign car, so I'm holding off on the foreign cars. Carl's Corner, old people always buried things. Often they did. You hear about that. Yeah, Jason Music Man says you've told us about finding lost money and the legality of it. But the key is if you find somebody's wallet, you can return it. If I find a silver dollar 6 inches underground, I can't return it. I mean, the guy who dropped it probably died 50 years ago. But yeah, that's the big distinction. You find a $20 bill by the side of the road, unless somebody comes by while you're there and goes, excuse me, have you seen my $20 bill? I left it here. The Great Quidjabo, cars made in America with globally sourced materials. I'm just talking about the nameplates. But of course, Quidjabo is one of those high scoring Scrabble words if you watch The Simpsons. Janie Segrest is at Walmart and enjoying the experience because she's listening to this chat. Andrew Lee says $4,000 a troy ounce is $200 per pennyweight. How many rods to the hogshead does your car get? MH08 says a friend of mine got mugged, and a few weeks later, his wallet showed up in the mail without the cash. Makes you wonder if the mugger had second thoughts, or if the mugger just took the cash and tossed the wallet. Somebody else goes, "Oh, guy's wallet," and mailed it back. Art S says you could look at it as gold is still worth the same. It's the dollar going down in value. It is all relative. It is all relative. Gordrat says you can distract Steve by talking about coins, rocks, aircraft, or cars. Also, rock and roll music, radio. Mark Sparks, catch me up. Okay, you got 9 minutes. G Keyman 565 found a new Android phone in the middle of the road. He texted the last number that was text, I'm lost. Do you know me? Got a call and ended with an extra 20 bucks. Terrell Cockrum and Bob Blah Blah both put it that Matt Groening was on CBS this morning. I did not see it. But yeah, Homer's side here and ear is his initials. There's all kinds of funny stories about the origins of the names and so on. Know that. Well, Canadian Robot Lady, it's been here for a while, but she says, I got to break up the party. I've got a ton of work to get into today, so I'll say farewell to all you fun people in the chat. I'll be back soon. Steve Lehto, happy Sunday. Bye for now. Thank you for stopping in, my friend. I appreciate it. We missed you last week. Have a great holiday, eh? And as always, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Lion Zookeeper says it's a beautiful day here in Michigan. You need to take that Cobra out when you can. I got 68 degrees right now. I might do that. In fact, I probably will because I don't know how many more good days like this I'll have. Richard Trahoon's 3-cent silver U.S. coin is in 1852. I think that's quite early, but very cool. Art asks, we haven't talked about the folding chair yet. If you view these live streams as one long show, yeah. Cyberdoc, you wear driving shoes? No, but I don't. I often wear like tennis shoes when I'm walking around in real life. I don't wear those driving because they're a little bit wider, and the pedals on both of my nice cars are close together. Carl's Corner has a bad storm coming in. Gordwrath, my brother gave me an MV100 mic to record music. Is that good? I don't know. I don't recognize it. Who makes it? Oh, and Art S says that the 3-cent silver is minted from 1852 to 1872, which sounds about right. Weird Car Life with TC, the movie. I'm making a movie. I hope I can convince you to watch it when it's done in February. Yeah, it'll be at theaters or on YouTube. Bob Kerflugen, we'd love to see a video of you taking a car and seeing the colors. We don't have colors yet here in Michigan, not where I am. Upper Peninsula of Michigan's got colors right now, but it's gonna be a little while. JC the Music Man, is the folding chair an inside joke or channel lore? Both. So currently on the show, when I shoot videos, I sit in that chair right there, which is basically the same as this chair right here. Slight differences, but they're made by the same company. I used to sit in a folding chair, a white plastic and metal folding chair. And I did that on purpose because I put the chair in a spot so that the focus is correct, the mic was correct, and I didn't move. And I made the mistake of showing it on camera one day. They were, oh my God, you sit in a folding chair. And people were freaking out about the folding chair. And so I just ignored it. But when I started shooting the live streams and you could see the chair, every single Sunday, people, oh, what's with the folding chair? What's with the folding chair? So I replaced it one day with a wooden folding chair, which I thought would be better. What's with a wooden folding chair? So I went out and bought that chair. It is more comfortable, but mainly just to get people to shut up. Bob Kerflugen says the fall colors are just starting to pop in the Gaylord area. So that means that they might be coming soon to where I am. I'm I'm in southeastern Michigan, down a little further. It happens by latitudes. Glenn Lagos says northern Illinois is beautiful in autumn. Lovely plumage. Fatty Butterpants does a new chair fold. No, but it adjusts. It adjusts. Cyberdoc wishing all of you a terrific and productive week ahead. Be well. Be well. Yeah, it's been a while since we talked about the folding chair. There are so many things. There's a lot of inside jokes. I remember listening to the radio years ago, and morning shows often have these inside jokes. I wonder, how do they come up with those? You don't come up with them; they just happen on their own. They happen organically. Carl's Corner. Steve sells Factor chairs and leather shoes. So you must have missed the ad I did for the Lumino tooth stuff a couple weeks ago. Also, not leather shoes. The shoes they sold were more, well, they sold all kinds of stuff. Rock Rooster. Weird Car Life with TC, the movie says the movie will be here for free. Here, you mean YouTube? Cool. Belio wants a 2-minute warning, so I'll give you a 2-minute warning because I show 2:58 by my clock. The big clock on the wall, as I like to say. Fat Blue with a PH. Thank you, Steve. Good night, all. And to you, my friend. Chief FC says we have fall colors here in Virginia. Cool. SKS Hugo, I keep hoping to find Ben in the chair's headrest. I don't think there's a place to put it in there. And if I did, I'll take a look at that. Yeah, Ram 50 V8, the Coyote versus Acme movie. We're still working on that. We don't have anything yet, but we will soon. Leon Anders, good day. Hope to see you at one of the concerts. I've done 12 concerts this year, maybe 13. I lost track. I'll make a list one of these days. Yeah, the great Quidjabo says the palm trees in Southern California are either brown or green. I remember that too. Very, very depressing when all the trees turn brown. All the leaves are brown. And the sky is gray. Dustin Carpenter, thanks for stream, Steve. Dr. Rick, Steve, next week, my friend. Chief FC, I quite like my Rock Rooster boots. I've got Rock Rooster stuff. I wear them every day still. And Bob Laba says, I made the donuts. It was time for donuts 2 hours ago. The ditto, everyone. Daniel Kester. The donuts have been made. So that's going to be it right now. I'll talk to you guys later. As always, have a good week, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.